Since a design is almost never complete and perfect the first time we put it on the page, having tools that allow you to change your layout as you go and still keep things ordered on the page, grid tools are really useful for doing this. So in this presentation I'll talk about how you can use align and distribute, the rectangular grid tool, divide an object into a grid, and also the blend tool for dividing rectangular space in ways that are changeable and flexible as your layout develops. The align and distribute tools are pretty commonly known. I can select several items on my page, and in Illustrator I can find the align window here, or I can have the align window open at all times and access it that way. By default I can specify whether things are going to align to the artboard, in which case right now if I distribute these horizontal lines, they will align themselves to the full artboard. So I could divide this into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces, 5 horizontal rows. Sometimes I want to distribute them to the, let me change this here, align to the selection, which means I'm just going to align, they're just going to distribute the lines within the boundaries of the things that I have selected. And when it comes to aligning, sometimes I might have things distributed all over the place, but I want to, this is usually as I'm in the refinement stage of my design, not the blocking in stage, but I might want to align to a specific item. So rather than aligning to either the artboard or the selection itself, I might want to align to a specific item. So I could choose this one and say align left, and elements would be aligned to that specific line. I don't actually have to go to the illustration or to the align window to do that. If I select a bunch of different things and then just click on one of the items, my align tools will go to that object. So align to key object is a handy, select these things, click, align to the top of that one thing, align, distribute to selection, and align. I'll just center these and distribute to vertical space. So that gives me, with just any drawn lines, I can align and distribute into both horizontal and vertical grid divisions. So just having two different sets of horizontal and vertical lines gives me a lot of flexibility. I can add another, I can just option drag another one, and then my grid distribution changes if I find I need to add another row. And if because each of these has now a fill, or sorry, a black stroke on them, if I want to have these on the page but not print or not be as prominent in the design, I can always go to view, guides, and then make these lines guides, in which case they won't print, but they'll be visible on the page. So there's a little bit about align and distribute. The rectangular grid tool is part of the line segment tools collection. That's the polar grid is another demo video I've made here, but a rectangular grid, just like any shape, if I want to divide this into specific numbers and have a specific height and width, I just click once on the page and then I can input my values. If I want to click and drag, I can use the up arrow to add rows, down arrow removes, right arrow adds, left arrow removes. Pretty straightforward. And if I hold, whoops, if I have the rectangle grid tool, hold shift, I'm going to make a square. Although these aren't squares because the divisions aren't quite the same. Let me try that again. Let's say I wanted to do 4 and 4 gives me a 16 by 16 square. You can start with a rectangular grid, but that can always be rotated 45 degrees. And amazingly, I have a diamond grid tool. So rectangular grid tool gives you a good quick division of rectangular space. And this is also the rows and frame are grouped. So if I want to use the direct select tool, I can move any of these lines within that space and quickly modify the grid that I started with. Another way that I could divide a grid space on my composition is to start with just a single shape. It actually doesn't matter what shape I start with, I'm going to get a rectangular grid with this method. But if I start with a square and say this is the space I want to divide, I can come up to Object, Path, Split into Grid, and then I'll get this prompt window. You can turn on preview here to see what's going on, but I can divide that into different spaces for rows and columns, and I can also add some space between the gutters of the rows and columns and get a nice even grid structure. So that's a quick division, and if I want to modify that, I can have exceptions to this where I build different components that are still aligned with that grid, and if I use the eyedropper tool, I can just make those all uniform one-point rules again. But that's a quick method for dividing space from a single object. The blend tool can help me divide space either horizontally or vertically, or any other direction for that matter. But unlike the align and distribute tools, with blended objects, if I look at this in outline mode, I see that I really only have 2 lines here, and all the lines in between are being rendered by Illustrator using the blend. So an advantage of a blend tool is if I come to the object blend options, I could quickly add more divisions of space if I want to. It's quickly editable, changeable without much time investment. I could also specify if I want this to be a specific distance, a bunch of lines that are say 1/2 inch apart. I could do that, and then no matter where I place my objects, all these spaces are exactly 1/2 inch, and I can add as many as I need. Another advantage of this is it's a changes in live time. So even if I have added, if I change the end strokes here, or even crossover, it blends the spaces between those objects from one to the next. The way that I do this is to start with, I'm just going to draw a line first. So the line tool, that's one. Object, select another one. Object, blend, make, Command Option B. Usually if you do this, it might look like this. Rarely does the first blend look like what I want it to look like, so I have to go to Object, blend options. For some reason there's no quick key command for that, but this is where I can change specified steps. If I want this to be 16, I can, and I can preview it, or again, if I wanted it to be a specific distance, I could do that. So really powerful in terms of changing the appearance from one to the next. So if I want this bottom stroke, if I select with the direct select arrow and change the stroke width on this bottom stroke, you see what happens. Also, if I want this to be dashed, I can get that look. Let's see. So really powerful, changeable components to the blend using the blend tool, and a useful way to divide space in your composition.